postmodern? Why not Altermodern? Because the first element was this kind of exhaustion of the term, the prefix post. No, we're in postmodern times, post-history, post-feminism, post-everything. It's been 30 years now that we are living in the suburbs of history in some ways, referring to an event that was the modern, or feminism, or politics, or something that happened that we have left. We're not here anymore. No, we've got rid of the event, and we kind of, turn around it, since then. This feeling is at the end kind of unbearable in some ways. So the bet of this exhibition, the bet of this term, Altermodern, it's to be a kind of dream catcher for what could be a new modernity, a modernity for 21st century. Not getting back to modernism, not getting back to all the formulas that were used, the notions that were, at play in 20th century modernism. Not at all. It's not about being nostalgic at all. It's not the will to get back to the notion of progress, which actually was the fuel of modernism. It's trying to find something else. And if there's one idea in this exhibition, it's the fact that maybe today, at the surface of this planet, there are signs, clues of the possibility of this new modernity. That would be, for the first time in history, a world modernity, a planetarian modernity, that concerns absolutely every place in the planet in some ways. Because there's a new element that never existed at this extent before, which is globalization. We are living in a totally different situation than ever. It's a totally new situation. And out of this process, which is generally described, and for good reasons, as a negative process of standardization, homogenization of the planet, there might be a way to fight back in some ways. I really believe in singularity, for example. I really believe in the possibility of developing differences and not living under the same standardized, culture. But this has to, it's not easy, because the strength of the globalization, the economic globalization movement is very massive, actually. But I do think that from this danger, we can see the seeds of a possible, organized culture that would really constitute what modernity was when at the end of 19th century, for example. Never forget that modernity, and I really, stand for it, was born as a reaction to one level of standardization, which was the industrialization of the world, of the Western world. In 1893, the writings of Frederick Winslow Taylor, the Taylorization of all the factories in Europe, and then Fordism, that really literally comes out of the writings of Taylor. This situation, this date, in 1893, is a quite important moment in a way. It's the formulation of this first level of standardization, the idea of a pure control of time, a pure standardization, homogenization of the human activities in working places. Today we reached, 10 levels more, actually. Our everyday life is totally submitted to these ideas whose seeds are actually in the writings of Frederick Winslow Taylor. At the beginning of this century, it is important to rethink the modern, important that is, to move beyond the historical period defined by the postmodern. The starting point has to be globalization, understood in its economic, political and cultural aspects. More to the point, the starting point has to be blindingly obvious fact, to the extent that 20th century modernism was a purely Western cultural phenomenon. Today, there remains the task of envisaging its global equivalent, that is to say, of inventing innovative modes of thought and artistic practices that would this time be directly informed by Africa, Latin America or Asia, and would integrate ways of thinking and acting current in, say, Nunavut, Laos or Bulgaria. This time, to have an impact, African tradition need no longer to influence new Dadaists in a future Zurich, nor need Japanese print inspire tomorrow's Manet. Today's artists, whatever latitudes they live in, have the task of envisaging what would be the first truly worldwide culture. But there is a paradox bound up with this historic mission, which will have to be undertaken not in the wake of, but in resistance against that political pressure to conform known as globalization. In order for this emergent culture, born of differences and singularities, to come into being, instead of conforming to the ongoing standardization, it will be necessary to develop for it a specific imagination, relying on logic unlike that which presides over capitalist globalization. It's up to us now.